大家好，我是Libra教育集团的总裁，我叫 Osaka. Hello to everyone joining us via Zoom. Hello to everyone joining and watching us through YouTube and any of our other channels as well. It's a real pleasure for me to be speaking to you today. And we're going to be talking today about life, education, and work here in the UK. Now, there's a lot of material for us to get through, and I'm going to try and bring to you some of the experiences that I've had in my time here in England. Talk to you a little bit about what it's like to live here on the day-to-day, the houses that you would live in England, the way that people socialize and speak to each other. Hopefully, I'm going to give you some kind of indication about what it's like to be educated in the UK. What are the things that really matter for the students here? And how do the teachers encourage students to be successful? Finally, I'm going to touch on work. What is it that makes a successful businessman or woman here in the UK? How are things different to other countries around the world? And what are the things that you need to watch out for if you ever take up an opportunity to work here? So with that, I'm going to get started. As I said, we're going to go for a normal progression. We're going to talk about studying first, because this is really the foundation of how you build a life and a career. Now, whether you choose to build that life and that career here in the UK, the opportunity to study here is something that is very hard to turn down. That's one of the reasons that today the UK is the #1 destination for international students around the world. Something that I'm very proud of. We'll talk about life, as I mentioned, and how you can build a life and how you can build a community around you in the UK. And finally, the rules, tips, and tricks for working here successfully. Now, we won't go into too much detail about the processes of application or how to obtain an internship or a job. But if you are interested, either reach out through WeChat or attend one of our upcoming lecture series where we'll give much more information on this. So a large part of today is about sharing my own personal story. We have millions of students here in the UK. Every single one has a different journey and a different experience to speak about. All I can share with you is my own journey and my own experience. My education started properly at the age of 16 when I won a fully funded scholarship to study at Eton College. You can see me there in the middle photo with my mother, who was very proud of me. What I'm wearing in that photo is our school uniform. Now, Eton is a boarding school. It's only for boys, and it has around 1,500 boys studying there. That uniform I'm wearing was worn every single day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through to Sunday when we had to attend chapel. Now, in order to obtain a place at Eton, the application process lasted for 3 days. This was because I was applying for a scholarship. That scholarship involved a maths test, an essay test, and then an interview in each of the subjects that I was applying for. For me, that was maths, economics, physics, French, and geography. So 5 interviews with the heads of subjects. The very final day before I went home, I had an interview with the headmaster. That was probably the single most important thing in my entire application. What the headmaster was looking for was someone that could be confident, that could communicate well, and would be a good leader within the school. When we think about a school like Eton, we think about the great leaders who have come from the school. In total, the UK has had 19 prime ministers that have come from Eton. 19 different men who have led the country after attending that school. On top of that, it's had many prime ministers from other areas of the world and many business leaders as well. Now, the common theme, there's many different themes that Eton put a lot of importance on. One of the favorite things, though, is the importance on sport. Sport in British schools is something that students will do almost every day. It's seen as a great way to make friendships and to build communication skills. On top of that, it's a great way to become a leader. If you can lead people on a sports field, then you can lead them in a business room. Now, Eton has got a lot of many unique sports. This is one of my personal favorites, and it's called beagling. Beagling is a very British sport, and it originates from hunting many years ago. It involves a pack of dogs called beagles, and Eton College has its own kennels. So it has around 100 beagles that are housed at the school. Every afternoon, whichever boys are part of the Beagling Society take the dogs, all 100 dogs, for a walk across the fields and through the grounds. The idea is that one boy will run ahead with a scent, something that smells like a fox or a rabbit. They trail this on the ground behind them, and after around 30 or 40 minutes, the rest of the boys with the dogs set off to chase that boy down. So this is just one of the great many unique sports to the UK, and something that Eton is very strong at. One sport that I'm sure you will have heard of is of rowing, and Eton has an amazing tradition of rowing, as do many schools in the UK. It's a fantastic way to work together as a team. As you can see, this boat has 9 participants. It's a great way to build resilience and to show determination. Boys have to support each other to train hard. This particular photo is taken from the 4th of June, which is an end of year celebration at the school. There are maybe 50 different boats across the school. They must paddle past the parents on the riverbank and stand up in the boat to show their skills. Now, this boat is doing well, but sometimes these boys will start to lose their balance. And in the worst scenarios, they end up swimming. So it's not always about being perfect in anything that you do. But I think British education for boys and girls at school is about trying. It's about showing that you're committed to improving and that you're not afraid to give something a go, even if there's a chance that you will fail. Final sport that I'll mention is the sport of football. Again, I'm sure you've heard of it. What you might not know is that it was actually invented at the private schools of the UK. Eton was one of the main 3 schools that invented football as it's played today. In our bottom right, we can see a slightly embarrassing photo of Boris Johnson, current Prime Minister of the UK, during his time at Eton. Now, sport is obviously one really important thing for school children. I think another element that makes education in the UK so impressive is the level of competition that is encouraged. Now, this is competition not just on the sports fields, but also in the classrooms. When I first joined Eton, I was surprised to see that at the end of each school term, a full list of places were read to the entire year in every subject, from first place to 200th place. That happened 3 times a year. So at every single point, every student in UK schools will know where they are in relation to their peers. Now, this can be quite a daunting thing. It can be slightly intimidating. But if it's done well, it can be a great way to motivate people. It motivates students to work hard. And importantly, it motivates students to ask for help when they need it. No one person can be expected to improve without the support of the students that they work with or the teachers that share information. And knowing when to ask for help is one of the important things that I think this level of competition will encourage. Now, I remember there was one particular boy in my economics class who always beat me. Every single homework that we were given, the teacher would read the score out, and he would always be 1 mark ahead of me. Now, this happened every single time for 6 months. And I promise you that every single time I heard those grades, I would go home to my room and I would open up my textbook and I'd look to see why I didn't get that extra mark. Now, if I didn't know that he was beating me in every homework, I was getting good grades already. I might never have done that extra study. But because of that competition, it pushed me to go and to do that extra bit of reading. Now, after 6 months, that reading paid off. And for the first time, I managed to beat him. His name was Dom Steele. And I beat him in a homework. Now, the second we got back to the house, do you know what he did? He went straight to the library and picked up the first economics book he could find to start to read it. Because all the time I was thinking that I was 1 mark below him, he was thinking, how can I stay 1 mark ahead? So again, that competition is good for people, whether you're behind, as I was, or in front, like Dom was. It's just a positive tool that can generate really, really good direction for students. Now, after leaving Eton, I was able to take up a place studying at the University of Cambridge. Now, you'll see from this photo that even at university, my hair wasn't as long as it is now. I had 3 very happy years studying at Cambridge. I studied law and economics mixed together. It was probably one of the best experiences of my life from an education perspective. What I would say is that the top universities in the UK, they do make you work hard. Whilst I was studying, I had to write 5 essays every 2 weeks. Each essay had to be around 2,000 words. Now, that's a lot of work that you have to do outside of the normal lectures that you attend. But again, when you're working with other students who are passionate about those subjects, when you're working with some of the best teachers in the world, these concepts are interesting. And at university in the UK, you can choose very specific subjects. That means for many of the international students that I work with, they can pick out that 1 or 2 subjects that are their absolute passion, dedicate all of their time to it, and as a result, score a much better grade off the back of it. That means that choosing that major, choosing that subject, becomes all the more important. And I would really encourage anyone who is thinking about studying anywhere to choose a subject that really motivates you and really is something that you enjoy. Because if you do that, you're going to have a much better experience. Now, Cambridge isn't all about hard work and studies. That would make for a very dull experience. One of the best things about working hard is celebrating when the hard work is done. Now, at the end of the academic year, every Cambridge college organises something called a May Ball. This is a party that starts at 9 p.m. and goes all the way through the night until 6 a.m. As you can see, it's either white or black tie. But the thing that makes these events very special is that they are organised totally by the students from those colleges. It's not something that's organised by the universities at all. I was lucky enough, whilst I was studying, to organise the St Catherine's College May Ball. Now, that experience for me was one of the best learning experience of my entire time in education in the UK. For the first time, I had to think about a business model. I had to create a theme that would attract students to buy tickets. Now, tickets are expensive, maybe £100 per ticket for every student. So you have to create something very special to attract people to attend your ball. Once you've sold the tickets, well, then you've got to get to planning the event. Normally, you would have maybe 1,000 students attend in one night. Now, for someone like me, I had no prior experience of running a business, of running events, of managing people. And suddenly, on one night, I was managing a team of 250 people, professional staff. Now, you can imagine that at the age of 20, that's a really, really big challenge. But that is why it's such a great learning experience. And it's only at these top universities that you get the opportunity to practice leadership, to be creative, and to learn from the amazing people around you. One of the other fantastic things about these top universities is the connections that you make. In many of the Cambridge colleges, you have to dine in the halls at least 3 or 4 times per week. That forces you to meet with people that you might not otherwise speak to make connections that you otherwise would not have made. By meeting these people and by challenging yourself on the daily basis, you grow as a person, you make friends with many people, and you build connections that can help you throughout the rest of your life. To this day, when I look at my friends that I made at Eton and at Cambridge by going to dinners such as this, they are working in the top law firms, the top banks. They've moved into politics and founded their own businesses. If anything, I'm the poor relation. They're amazing people and I'm very lucky to have met them. And finally, of course, I couldn't go without mentioning sport and mentioning the boat race. What you can see here is a competition between the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge. It happens every year in London on the Thames and is watched by 500,000 people. It's a massive event and it shows how important education still is in the UK today. It's one of the most important things to British people on the streets of the country. So that was a bit of background to education in the UK. And it's really that education that led me to be here talking to you. It was this experience of studying at the best schools and universities that led me to found Libra Education. And I now have over 10 years of experience working with international students and UK students who are aiming to be successful at these top schools and universities. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about that today. But if you do have any questions for me, reach out to either myself or to Channel Usher, and we'll be able to talk to you about the options that you or your children have. But as I mentioned, today is not just about education. It's about looking at the total lifestyle here in the UK. Education, living, and work. And let's face it, no one lives for education. No one lives for a job. We get education and we get jobs in order to have fun, to build families, to build friendships. So this is the most important thing that I'm going to talk to you about today. How to build a happy life in the UK. Now, the first thing that I want to mention is around housing. If I move back one slide, you can see London here. London is a huge mega city, one of the largest in Europe. But what you will also see is that it doesn't have very many high-rise buildings. Sure, there are many offices, and that's where people work. But most people in the UK will only live in very low buildings, very traditional buildings. In fact, if I can just draw your attention to one thing. Maybe not, but you'll be able to see down by the river, those buildings are only 5 or 6 stories high. That means that across all of London, the average height is only 5 or 6. And in fact, as we saw just a moment ago, this is what an average house close to where I am sat right now would look like. Right now, I'm sat in our Libra Education office in Fulham. This is West London, very close to the centre, and yet all of the houses will look something like this. They are terraced housing. That means that the house that you live in has other houses on the left and the right-hand side, all in a row. Typically, these houses would be for one family. Maybe this house would be a 2 or a 3 bed. This is for a young family who has young children and successful careers that are just starting out. This is the kind of house that you would expect to be living in. And I think that what makes this housing special is that they are all so unique. Even in this photo here, we can see 2 houses, a similar size, the same location, and yet they have different styles and different design. It means that rather than choosing from flats that are often very similar, you can look for that special thing that you want, whether it's a garden or a roof terrace, green space for the family. All of this is an option. The big thing that defines a city, in my opinion, though, is eating and restaurants. Where do you meet and how do you socialize with people? Often for many of us, if we're working in the day or studying in the day, we'll do it over a meal in the evenings. Now, the photo you can see here is of one of my favorite traditional pubs in London. These pubs are all over the city. In fact, they're all over England. Every 100 or 200 meters will be a building like this. They serve very similar food of different standards, and they have a very friendly atmosphere. In fact, I had a friend who came to visit me from America, and this was maybe 2 years ago, and it was the first sunny day of the year. It was a Monday, and he arrived at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he walked across the city, and he came to visit me, and he said, "Oscar, what's happening today? Why is no one in work?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Everywhere that I walked, every pub that I've seen is full. Inside, outside, there's no space. Everywhere." And he was completely right. Now, why was this the case? Well, it was the first sunny day of the year. And if there's one thing that you have to celebrate in England, it's the first bit of sunshine in the summer. For most people, that means going to their local pub, eating together, socializing in normal times, and maybe having a glass of beer or a glass of wine. So that leads me nicely onto socializing, because it's not all about pubs in London. That's what we're famous for. But really what makes London special, in my opinion, is the green space that we have. Wherever you go, there will always be an area to sit outside. In the summer, this might be down by the Thames. It might be overlooking Canary Wharf or the city, as you can see in that photo at the top. Urban planners and developers these days in the UK place a huge importance on public spaces, especially outside during the summer months. Wherever you are in London, you're only a stone's throw from your nearest Royal Park. And during the summer, this is where the majority of me, my friends, and everyone else will go to hang out with each other and socialize. It's such a healthy, convivial way to live. I think being outside in the fresh air in the middle of a city is perhaps the most special thing that you can do. Now, it wouldn't be a proper experience living overseas without thinking about language. And this is something that makes me laugh. I didn't realize this until one of my friends from Europe said that in Britain, it's never simple to understand what people are trying to say. So I wanted to pull together a couple of my favorite examples. These are things that I've realized that I say, and it's not always clear what that means. So let me talk you through a few examples. In Britain, when you say, I hear what you say, I hear what you say, you might think that means he accepts my point of view. That would be a reasonable thing to expect. Well, what does it mean? It means in British terms, I disagree with you, but I don't want to talk about it anymore. When someone in Britain says, with the greatest respect, with all of the respect that I can give to you, the person you're saying it to might think, oh, he's listening to me. But no, wrong again. It means I think you're an idiot. I think you're wrong. And this is perhaps my favorite one. In Britain, in London, in Edinburgh, wherever you are, if someone says, that's not bad, that's not bad. You might think that means it's poor, but actually that is a big compliment. If one of my team brings me some work and I say, that's not bad, that basically means the job's done. You're finished. You can go home. And I can see that that's confusing. What are some more examples? If someone in Britain says it's quite good, what does that mean? Well, I'm sorry to say, it means the exact opposite. It means it's quite bad. It means I'm a bit disappointed with what you're telling me. When the British say, I would suggest, let me give you a suggestion. It's not really a suggestion. It means you need to do it like this, or you have to do it on your own. By the way, when someone in Britain says, by the way, it means that this is the single most important thing. In Britain, it's all about being polite. If you're talking to someone and you're listening to them, you listen and you talk and you talk. And because you want to be polite, you say right at the end of the conversation, by the way, what I really wanted to talk to you about. So even when people say, by the way, that's because they've been polite. They've waited to hear what you want to talk about. And then right at the end, the last thing that they say is almost always the most important thing. So you have to listen to the last thing that I tell you in this talk, because that's going to be the most important thing if I follow my own rule. And finally, perhaps my second favorite, in Britain, when someone says, very interesting, doesn't mean that they're impressed. It means that they either think it's nonsense or they're just not interested. So I know that that can be a little bit confusing, but at the same time, people in Britain are kind. They're very polite and they will never do anything to offend people. So if they can listen and if they can offer some very subtle hints on what you can do, then that's what you need to look out for. But most of all, remember that, by the way, means this is the most important thing. So let's talk a little bit about work. What are the things that you need to do or you need to be aware of in order to have a good time working and building relationships with people in the UK? Well, the first thing that you have to know is that people in England have very strong regional identities. Although we're a small country, the place that you're from is very important to every single person. If you said to someone from Scotland that they were English, they might never speak to you again. Equally, if you say to someone from Manchester that you think they're from Liverpool, that's the biggest insult that you can give. So you always have to be aware of where people are coming from. It tells you a lot about what's important to them. The bottom photo you can see here is Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, they call it God's own country. They say that it's so beautiful that it's where God would live if he was in England. They have many, many strange traditions there. My favorite strange tradition is their biggest competition every year. They go to the top of the steepest hill that they can find, and they take a big piece of cheese. It's like this, bigger than your head. They start it at the top, roll it down this beautiful hill, and a team of 50 or 100 men and women chase down the hill to try and catch it. It's incredibly dangerous. People always get injured. And what's the prize? The prize is the cheese at the end. Equally, you see here a photo of Liverpool, an urban environment, a city. The most important thing in Liverpool, the football team. If you're ever in England and you want to relate to someone in the office or in your home life, if they're from Liverpool or if they're from a city, talk to them about football and they'll be your friend for life. They'll help you in any of the work that you need. Communication is obviously key. As we explored a few moments ago, the British may seem reserved or even aloof in some circumstances. In fact, they're often very friendly and welcoming, but they can be a little slow to get going. The preferred British way to communicate is by email. Now that might seem quite out of date if you're coming from Russia, as I know some of you are, or China or the Middle East. But the British prefer to have the time before you meet someone to think about it. If you want to have a meeting or a discussion, it's always best to email them first. That's the same whether you're applying for a job, whether you're thinking about schools to apply for, or even if you just want to make contact with someone in your office. Always send an email first and give people the time and space to think about it. For work in the UK, this is perhaps the most important thing, and it's punctuality. In the UK, there's a saying that says, if you're not early, you're late. I have a reputation with one of my friends for always being late. He says to me every time, "Oh, you're always late. Oscar, you're never on time." He says this to me because one time I met him, I was 2 minutes late. Just 2 minutes, one time. And now I have the reputation for always being late. So if you ever have a meeting with someone from Britain, or if you're trying to apply for a job or a school place, remember, be early. Because if you're not early, you're late. Now, this is an interesting one. Gifts are such an important part of culture all around the world. And here in Britain as well, gifts are very, very important. When we have birthdays, when we have Christmases, gifts are always exchanged, and it's vital. The one place that we would not exchange gifts in the UK is in the workplace. In fact, many companies are not allowed to accept gifts, and they're not allowing their employees to give gifts. The idea is that there is a clear distinction between business on one side and friends and family on the other. Friends and family receive gifts. Work colleagues or potential business partners do not. Now, I personally think that's really strange. What can be nicer than giving a gift? But if you're ever doing work in the UK, just know that it's not expected, and it won't necessarily bring you any benefit if you do give gifts. The final thing about working life in the UK is that there's a great culture around holidays. For anyone who works in the UK, there are 8 bank holidays throughout the year. These are holidays that every single person must take. In addition, most people will get at least 30 days off in total across the year. And people are very flexible about when that can be taken. Most employers will let you take it whenever and wherever you want. So the only thing that's left for you to do is to decide where you want to take it. Now that's a very short introduction to education, to work, and to life here in the UK. But hopefully it's given a bit of a flavour for why the UK has become the #1 destination for international students around the world. The next talk is we're going to be talking about the competitive nature of education. I've mentioned it a little bit today, but we're going to be given much more detail about how that works, how that motivates children, and how you can use competition at home in order to achieve the results that you are looking for. If you're interested in signing up, you can follow our WeChat account or sign up to our outreach program here. The next talk will be in 2 weeks, and we're going to be looking to bring in some exciting guest speakers to co-host and to join us at that time. So all that leaves me to do is to say thank you very much for listening. To everyone at home, everyone in schools, thank you for tuning in. I hope it's been useful, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. If anyone has any questions at all, please reach out personally to either myself or to Chan Lao Shi, and we'll come back to you immediately with answers to those questions. In particular, we're available for the next hour solely to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you again. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.